Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alexey, and today what we're going to be doing is converting audio into MIDI in Studio One. First of all, let's have a listen to our drums. Now let's take our snare tab and let's highlight our thumbs. Let's hit right click of our mouse and let's hit duplicate tracks complete. Let's change the color for our duplicated audio tracks and let's rename these audio tracks. Now let's have a listen to these 4 audio tracks only. As you may hear and as you can see, these 4 audio tracks have some bleed. And before converting these audio tracks into MIDI, we have to clean these audio tracks. So let's open our mixer in Studio One. And for instance, for our snare tab, let's use Studio One Stack Gate plugin. And now let's adjust our threshold. Now let's have a listen to our snare tab audio file. Now let's do the same for our thumb audio tracks. Now let's have a listen to our thumb audio tracks. Now we can highlight all of our audio tracks and hit right click of our mouse. And here we can choose transform to rendered audio. And let's hit OK. Now let's have a listen to our audio tracks once again. Now let's create 4 MIDI tracks. Let's hit plus sign here. Let's choose instrument, count 4, and let's hit OK. Now let's rename our MIDI tracks. Now let's highlight our snare tap audio track and let's hit the right click of our mouse. Here let's go to audio menu and let's hit edit with Melodyne. Here let's open algorithm menu and we need percussive standard. So now we can drag and drop our MIDI data from our audio file to our MIDI track. So now we have MIDI data and velocity levels for our snare MIDI. Let's do the same for our Tone 1 audio track. Let's highlight our Tone 1 audio track. Again, let's hit right click of our mouse and here we already can choose edit with Melodyne. And now we have to drag and drop MIDI data from our audio file to our MIDI track. And now we have MIDI data for our Tone 1. And again we have different levels of velocity. Let's do the same for our Tone 2 audio track. Again, let's highlight our Tone 2 audio track. Let's click right click of our mouse and let's choose edit with Melodyne. Now we can drag and drop our MIDI data from our audio file to our MIDI track. Again, we have MIDI data for our Tone 2. And finally, let's do the same for our Tone floor. Again, let's highlight our Tone floor audio track. Let's hit right click of our mouse and let's choose edit with Melodyne. And now again we can drag and drop. And here we have our MIDI data for our Tone floor. Now let's rename our MIDI tracks. Let's hit right click of our mouse and here we can choose rename events. Now let's use any drums library for our MIDI tracks. In my case, I'm gonna be using Bogren Digital Cream Drums library. Now let's highlight all of our MIDI tracks. Let's solo our MIDI tracks and let's have a listen. And we have no audio for our drums library. Now let's fix it. For instance, let's open our snare MIDI. And our snare MIDI data is set to A3. Let's open our drums library. Here in our drums library, our snare hit is set to D0. So we can highlight all of our MIDI data here. We can hit right click of our mouse and here we have musical functions and let's choose transpose and here we can transpose to D0. Let's hit OK. So now our MIDI data is set to D0. Let's have a listen to our snare MIDI. Now let's open our Tone 1 MIDI track. And again our MIDI data of our Tone 1 is set to A3. Let's open our drums library. Here our Tone 1 hit is set to A0. Again, let's highlight all of our MIDI data here. Let's hit right click of our mouse. And here already we can choose transpose. And let's transpose to A0. And let's hit OK. Now we can see that all of our MIDI data is set to A0. Let's have a listen. Now let's go to our Tone 2 MIDI. Again, our MIDI data is set to A3. Let's open our drums library. And here our Tone 2 hit is set to A#0. Again, let's highlight all of our MIDI data here. Let's hit right click of our mouse. Let's choose transpose. And here we can add sharp sign. And let's hit OK. Now all of our MIDI data for our Tone 2 MIDI is set to A#0. Let's have a listen. And finally, let's go to our thumb floor. And again, our thumb floor MIDI data is set to A3. Let's open our drums library. Here we can set our thumb floor to thumb 3 and our thumb 3 hit is set to B0. Let's highlight all of our MIDI data. Let's hit right click of our mouse. Let's choose transpose and here let's write B0. And now let's hit OK. Now all of our MIDI data of our thumb floor is set to B0. Let's have a listen. Now let's highlight all of our MIDI tracks and let's have a listen to them. So it was the first way how you can convert audio into MIDI in Studio One by using Stack Gate plugin and by using Melodyne. Now let's take a look at our second way how you can convert audio into MIDI in Studio One. But in this case we have to copy our audio files like snare tab to our snare tab green audio file. We have to copy our thumb 1 to our thumb 1 green audio file. We have to copy our thumb 2 to our green thumb 2 audio file. And let's copy our thumb floor to our green thumb floor audio file. Now let's highlight our green audio files. Since we are using the same audio files as we used before, again you can see our audio files have some bleed. And in this case, to get rid of the bleed before converting our audio files into MIDI, we're gonna be using strip silence. First of all, let's highlight our snare tab and let's go to our strip silence menu. So here I have some settings for our strip silence. I'm using manual mode. I'm using -14 dB for our open threshold and for our close threshold. And here I have some settings for pre-roll and post-roll. Now let's hit apply. Now we can highlight all of our audio files here in our snare tab audio track and let's hit Command plus B. Now we have super clean our snare tab. Let's have a listen. Now let's highlight our thumb 1 audio track. Let's solo our thumb 1 audio track and since we're using strip silence, let's hit apply. Now let's highlight all of our audio files in our tone 1 audio track and let's hit Command plus B. Now we have super clean tone 1 audio track. Let's have a listen. Let's do the same for our thumb 2. Let's highlight our thumb 2. And again, we're using strip silence. And again, let's hit apply. Now, let's highlight all of our audio files in our thumb 2 audio track. And let's hit again Command plus B. Again, we have super clean thumb 2 audio track without any bleed. Let's have a listen. And let's do the same for our thumb floor audio track. Let's highlight our thumb floor audio track and let's hit apply in our strip silence menu. Now let's highlight all of our audio files in our thumb floor audio track and again let's hit Command plus B. Now let's have a listen. Again we have super clean thumb floor audio track. Now, after cleaning our audio tracks, again we can use Melodyne. So again, let's hit right click of our mouse on our snare tab audio file and let's choose edit with Melodyne. Now again we can drag and drop our MIDI data from our snare tab audio file to our snare MIDI track. Now let's highlight our Thumb1 audio file. Again, let's hit right click of our mouse, and again let's choose edit with Melodyne. And again we can drag and drop our MIDI data from our Thumb1 audio track to our Thumb1 MIDI file. And let's do the same for our Thumb2. Let's highlight our Thumb2 audio track. Let's hit right click of our mouse. Let's use edit with Melodyne, and let's drag and drop our MIDI data from our Thumb2 audio track to our Thumb2 MIDI file. And finally, let's do the same for our thumb floor. Let's highlight our thumb floor audio track. Let's hit again right click of our mouse, and again let's choose edit with Melodyne. And let's drag and drop our MIDI data from our thumb floor audio track to our thumb floor MIDI file. Now once again we have MIDI data for our MIDI files, such as snare MIDI, tone 1 MIDI, thumb 2 MIDI, and thumb floor MIDI. Now let's take a look at our third way, how we can convert audio into MIDI in Studio One. And in this case, we're going to be using audio band menu. So let's open our audio band menu in Studio One. Let's highlight our snare tab audio track, and let's hit analyze. And now we can drag and drop from our snare tab to our snare MIDI. And here we have just created a MIDI data for our snare MIDI. Now let's highlight our tone 1 audio track, and let's hit analyze in our audio band menu. Now we can drag and drop our tone 1 to our tone 1 MIDI. And again we just have created a MIDI data for our thumb 1 MIDI. Now let's go to our thumb 2. Let's highlight our thumb 2 audio track. Let's hit analyze, and let's drag and drop to our thumb 2 MIDI. And again we have a MIDI data for our thumb 2 MIDI. And finally let's go to our thumb floor audio track. Let's highlight our thumb floor audio track. Let's hit analyze, and let's drag and drop to our thumb floor MIDI. And we just have created some MIDI data for our thumb floor MIDI. Now, finally, let's take a look at our final and fourth way how you can convert audio into MIDI in Studio One by using Groove Editor. So in this case, we have to go to Studio One menu and hit Q button here, which stands for quantize. Here we have two menus, grid menu and groove menu, and we're going to be using groove menu. So first of all, let's highlight our snare tab audio track, and let's drag and drop our snare tab audio track to our groove menu. Here we have some velocities. Now we can take these velocities and drag and drop them to snare MIDI track, and we just have created some MIDI data for our snare MIDI track. Now let's go to our tone 1 audio track. Let's highlight our tone 1 audio track, and let's drag and drop to our groove menu. Now we can take these new velocity levels and drag and drop to our tone 1 MIDI track. And we just have created some MIDI data for our tone 1 MIDI track. Now let's highlight our thumb 2 audio track, and let's drag and drop our thumb 2 audio track to our groove menu. Now we can take these velocity levels and drag and drop them to our thumb 2 MIDI track. And once again we have just created some MIDI data for our thumb 2 MIDI track. Finally, let's go to our thumb floor audio track. Let's highlight our thumb floor audio track, and let's drag and drop our thumb floor audio track to our groove menu. Now we can take these velocity levels and drag and drop them to our time flow MIDI track. And we just have created some MIDI data for our time flow MIDI track. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you like the video and I hope this video will be useful for you, and see you next time.